It was a quiet Saturday night, a time that used to be my moment of relaxation, but now it was filled with empty silence. I sat in the living room, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and flipping through an old photo album with the other. Smiling faces, vacations, anniversaries. The beautiful memories captured in the photos now felt like borrowed illusions, hollow and unsettling. As I was lost in fragments of the past, the door creaked open, followed by the unmistakable sound of high heels clicking on the floor. It was Amy. She always walked with a certain confidence, as if the world owed her something. I didn't look up, waiting for her to speak first. "Darling," she greeted me sweetly, though her tone carried a sharp edge. "I parked the car outside and thought I'd introduce you to someone." She dangled her keys, her red dress hugging her figure. The same dress she wore on our 15th wedding anniversary, though now it felt like a cruel joke. "His name's Nathan," she continued with a smirk. "You met him at the company party. Tonight, we're going out, and I thought you two should get acquainted. Don't worry, you'll like him. He's much more fun than you." I set my coffee cup down gently on the table and locked eyes with her. "What did you just say?" "You brought him to my doorstep. If he takes one step inside, I'll make sure he leaves in an ambulance. And as for you, if you walk out that door, don't even think about coming back. You'll regret it for the rest of your life." She let out a sharp laugh, like she was mocking a helpless fool. "Oh, spare me the threats, Connor. You're all talk but never do anything. You think you can scare me? I've already found someone who makes me happier. When I don't come back, you'll beg for me. But I won't return." I stood up abruptly, startling her into taking a half step back. "Do you really think this is a game?" I said, calm but seething with anger. "You've used me and walked all over me for long enough. I'm done with the lies. Done with your arrogance and disdain." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Connor, save your breath. You act tough, but you always end up staying right here, clinging to this house. Deep down, you need me? Is that what you think?" I stared at her. "You see me as a pushover, don't you? Fine. Go ahead. Leave with your Nathan, but don't think you can waltz back in here." She crossed her arms and glared at me mockingly. "You're pathetic. I chose someone else because you're boring, predictable. What do you even do besides drink coffee and flip through photo albums? Wake up, Connor." I said nothing more, just let out a soft laugh. "You're right about one thing. I am predictable, but not in the way you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "It means," I said, stepping back, "I'm not wasting any more time on someone like you. If you're leaving, go ahead. Don't wait until it's too late to realize you've lost everything." And Amy let out a cold snort. "Whatever, Connor. Nathan's waiting." She turned and clicked her way out the door. I watched as the car in the driveway started up, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed. "Good luck, Nathan." I called out to the man in the car, jet ready to be drained dry. Amy shot me a venomous glare. "So childish, Connor. You're just jealous I found someone better." "No, Amy," I replied calmly. "I just don't care anymore." The car drove off, leaving an empty driveway and me holding my rapidly cooling coffee. I stood still for a moment, then turned and closed the door, heading back to the living room. The old photo album was still spread out on the coffee table, but I no longer had the heart to look through it. I closed it and picked up my phone, a faint smile forming on my lips. It was time to take action. That night, I logged into our joint account. The balance wasn't much, just over 400, but it was enough to make a point. Without hesitation, I transferred every penny to my personal account, watching the joint account drop to zero. "You like excitement, don't you?" I muttered to myself. "Let's start with having no money." Next, I called Martin, a real estate agent I had met at a social event. "Martin, I want to sell my house. As fast as possible." Martin sounded taken aback. "So urgent. Did something happen?" "Don't ask questions. I'm willing to price it low if you can close the deal by tomorrow morning." After a pause, he replied, "All right. If you're serious about the price cut, I might be able to find a cash buyer." "Good. I'll send you the details shortly." I hung up and glanced around the house. To be honest, Amy had been the one to choose this place, and I didn't feel attached to it. If she wanted to blow everything up, I might as well walk away from all these memories. Over the next hour, I scanned all the necessary documents and emailed them to Martin with a single, meaningful line: "Sell it by sunrise." But after finishing the house arrangements, I gathered all the evidence of Amy's affair with Nathan. Flirty texts, photos of them holding hands, hotel receipts, and some personal belongings Nathan had left behind. I laid everything neatly on the dining table, placing the divorce papers on top, along with a nota. You like excitement. Try starting over. Good luck. You'll need it. Satisfied, I looked around one last time. It was time to leave. I grabbed the travel bag I had packed days ago, containing a few clothes and some important keepsakes. Before stepping out, I took a final glance at the now empty house. The framed photos on the walls, the furniture we picked together, the kitchen that once held laughter and warmth. They were all someone else's memories now. I turned off the power, locked the door, and left. When Amy returned, all she would find was an empty shell. By dawn, I was sitting in a small diner 2 towns away, sipping black coffee and checking my phone. A message from Martin popped up. House sold. Cash settled. Congratulations, Connor. I smiled. It was the first step of my plan. The next step was disappearing completely. I had already rented a small apartment in another city. The keys were in my pocket. As for a new job and a new social circle, I'd take my time building them. For now, freedom was my priority. I could imagine Amy's shock when she returned to an empty house. Unable to unlock the replaced locks and confronted with the damning evidence and divorce papers, she'd realize I was no longer the man who tolerated her endless betrayal. That day I drove to my new apartment. Sunlight streamed through the car windows, warming my face, and I felt a long, lost sense of liberation. Amy thought she had won, but she never saw this coming. For me, this wasn't defeat, it was rebirth. In the following days, Amy's calls flooded in. They started with anger, turned to pleading, and eventually to desperation. Connor, where are you? Why is the house empty? Please call me back, she sobbed in one voicemail. I didn't reply. My focus was on settling into my new city. The small rented apartment was cozy enough. I found a job at a hardware store, not as high paying as my old one, but far less stressful. No more overtime or walking on eggshells. Every morning I went for a jog in the nearby park, breathing in the crisp, fresh air and feeling lighter than I had in years. One morning, I noticed a woman who jogged at the same time as me. She was more professional, her stride steady and breathing controlled. We exchanged nods in passing. After a few encounters, she slowed down to match my pace. Beautiful weather today, she said with a smile. Yeah, I replied. It's a good day for a run, bot. I'm Rebecca, she introduced herself. Connor. From then on, my jogs became a little more companionable. At first, we just ran together. Later, we'd occasionally talk about our hobbies. Eventually, we'd grab a juice after our runs. Rebecca was the polar opposite of Amy. Kind, genuine, and never sharp-tongued. She listened with interest and sincerity. I found myself letting go of the pain of the past. Meanwhile, Amy's life was spiraling. Nathan bled her dry before showing his true colors. He wrecked her car and refused to compensate her. Their fights escalated until Nathan vanished, leaving her with a mess. Amy moved in with a friend, but even that arrangement was temporary. She was running out of options. As for me, I rediscovered passions Amy had once mocked. My DSLR camera, dismissed by her as a useless toy, became a tool for capturing the beauty of my new surroundings. I took photos of the town's market streets, sunrises, and sunsets. Each click of the shutter reminded me of the freedom I had reclaimed. Through my photography, I met more people, including Sarah, a member of a local community group. Together we organized events, volunteered, and sometimes hung out at a cozy cafe. Sarah's quiet support and encouragement gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. She even accompanied me to a small photography exhibition where I showcased my work for the first time. One day, Sarah asked about my past. I told her about my failed marriage without delving into details. She didn't pry, only responded gently. Some wounds come with a price, but they don't define who we are. Months passed, and I thrived in my new life. Amy occasionally left voicemails or emails, alternating between apologies and insults, but I ignored them all. The past was sealed. One afternoon, while walking with Sarah in the park, I spotted Amy sitting on a bench. Her hair was disheveled, her face tired. She looked up, her eyes filled with regret and panic. She stood and called out, her voice hoarse. Connor, can we talk? Sarah glanced at me, silently offering to give us privacy. I shook my head and responded coldly. There's nothing to talk about, but tears welled in Amy's eyes. I know I made mistakes. I'm sorry. This time, I didn't waver. I simply said, goodbye, and walked away, holding Sarah's hand. Amy seemed to hesitate but didn't follow. Afterwards, Sarah asked if I was all right. I smiled. I'm great. Later, Amy sent a long email expressing her regret and begging for forgiveness. I read it, then quietly deleted it. No response was necessary. I had moved on. Life continued peacefully and joyfully. Sarah and I grew closer, sharing morning runs, community events, farmers markets, and home-cooked meals. Often, I reflected on how the betrayal I once endured had led me to this place of fulfillment. One weekend, we drove to a lakeside cabin for a short getaway. As the sun set over the water, we sat side by side. Sarah rested her head on my shoulder and said softly, "Thanks for bringing me here." I gazed at the golden ripples on the lake. "I should be thanking you for showing me I'm still worth loving." She smiled. "We both are." In that moment, I felt a profound peace and freedom. The pain, humiliation, and shattered pride of the past had finally turned to dust, far behind me. Amy and Nathan were merely fleeting chapters in my story. Now, I was walking into a broader, brighter life. Maybe they were still paying the price for their choices, but that no longer concerned me. I had learned that true happiness was always in my own hands.